Hi everybody, I'm Brad with Big Family Homestead, and in this video I'm going to share with you my perspective, a homesteader's perspective of Haiti. So a few years ago I had an opportunity to go to Haiti with a missionary group. Now they were there basically to work with a group of orphan girls. We were there also to build some homes, replace roofs. And so in the next few moments, I'm going to go ahead and just show some imagery while I go ahead and talk about my thoughts on Haiti from the perspective of a guy who is now interested in homesteading and gardening and all that kind of stuff. So it may give you a kind of a different perspective on it. And so I hope you like it, hope that you're blessed. So here we go. So we left the United States from the Miami airport, and it didn't take long to jump across over there and get into Port-au-Prince. Now, first of all, Port-au-Prince obviously their biggest city, and the thing is that there are, I was surprised to see that there's a lot of modern convenience, but it quickly is obvious that there is a serious contrast in the rich and the poor are everywhere. Now, if you had watched the news during the whole earthquake thing, that massive earthquake they had a few years back, you'll know that most every building was destroyed or damaged. And unfortunately, much of that is exactly the same. For lots of reasons, politics and greed and corruption has basically hindered the rebuilding and, well, frankly, the well-being of the Haitian people. And so the tent cities that you would hear of are still there. And most people live in some kind of broken down, situation. If you don't have a job, then you don't have money. And if you don't have money, then i.e. your housing becomes a real challenge. I mean, there were thousands upon thousands of people living in an area that you would maybe call maybe a square block. But the thing is that they're literally in tents or cardboard hovels or tin roofs that they made into squares, and they would just make do, but thousands and thousands of people are still in desperate need. But the interesting thing once again is that they're finding a way to do it. Without anything, they're figuring out ways to get what they need done. Driving in Haiti is kind of like the Old West. I really don't think there's any rules. It's just go, go, go and don't get hit. As a matter of fact, one of the funny things was, well, not funny at all. I mean, they're making do with what they have. Almost every vehicle was somehow cut open and added onto to make into like these massive taxis. And any vehicle that we saw was literally jam-packed full with people. I mean, 20 people could easily get into, say, a Datsun old four-cylinder pickup truck that they put a topper on, and they'd have 20 people in the back there. And it was kind of like this massive, transit system of taxis that people just stop, jump on, jump off. But that was kind of, let's just say, dicey at times. White knuckle rides. That's definitely, you're going to get that in Haiti. Now, one thing that I thought was very interesting was that the Haitian people always seem to figure out a way to make something out of nothing. And by that I mean they would not have any money to buy a house, so they would find scrap and they'd make themselves something to live in. Now, they obviously don't have access to stores like Home Depot, and even if they did, they don't have money to buy anything. So I always felt like it was very interesting to look at how they were doing things and how they were getting things done. For an example, one of the things I thought was very interesting is there were chickens and there were pigs and there's stuff like that all out around, but they literally didn't have fencing for them, so they would tie them up. They would literally tie a piece of cord on their leg and tie them to a bush or a tree, or well, very few trees at all, but they would tie them to something that they couldn't get away with. So they basically figured out ways to get done what they needed to get done without any money, and I thought that was very interesting. I found the Haitian people to be very warm and kind. They were very curious. Of course, I'm carrying around this camera, right? So they're probably going to want to see what the heck that thing's about. A lot of people there had never even seen anything like that. Matter of fact, when we got away from the city, the missionaries orphanage that we were working with was only about 40 minutes away in terms of drive time, but it was absolutely night and day from Port-au-Prince to where this missionary orphanage was, and it was just an unbelievable difference. All the buildings that were actual buildings and weren't piles of rubble, they all were walled in with very high walls. They all had barbed wire or some kind of cutting implement on all of the gates and everything to keep, you know, thieves out and robbers, whatever. And so it was very interesting. It definitely was what you view in your mind's eye as third world. Now, some of the houses that we worked on putting roofs on while we were there, I found it extremely culture shock kind of thing. Because basically, let's put it this way. If you stood in the center of the room of a house that we were working on, which would have been considered pretty nice, you could reach your left hand out and your right hand out and touch both sides of the house. Now, if you went and turned a 90 degrees, it would only be about double that length, and that was the size of the entire house, people. I mean, you're talking 4 people living in something like that. They kept them clean, they kept them nice, but it was just incredibly, incredibly tight conditions. So in retrospect of this trip, this missionary journey to Haiti, I think my personal biggest takeaway is the importance of being prepared for a disaster. You never know when a disaster is going to come, but so many people were caught unaware and had nothing to start with, and then now you take away their living space, and what's now? I mean, what'd you do? You don't have a way to feed yourself. You don't have a way to clothe yourself. You're completely helpless, and you're completely 100% trusting your life with somebody else, some government agency, some government entity. You know, and here's another thought. This was one of the things that they communicated to me was a huge problem, is that when the earthquake happened, agencies and countries and missionaries from all over the world flooded the place. And what they did was they started setting up shop and getting people their basic needs and then getting them all this stuff, and then they left. That's not rebuilding infrastructure. Now all of a sudden, you're just back to the way it was. So my takeaway would be, have some food on hand, have a plan, have some way to say, you know what happened if a tornado came through here and ripped the roof off my house? What would I do? I don't know. It's different, every situation is different, but just the idea that we should be thinking about what it is we need to do to take care of ourselves and somebody else. What if you're in a situation where you maybe don't need the aid, but your neighbor does? So I am Brad with Big Family Homestead. I hope you like this video. Please share it around, like, subscribe, and you have yourself an amazing day.